that, like I said, it's a box of psychoactive frog, because honestly, when you start climbing into this, that's why we created a 120-hour 9-week course that actually covers 40 different naturally occurring plants, animals, and fungi from all around the world that I'll discuss a little bit later. But how it actually works is that our brains are kind of like supercomputers. And with the right programs or programming, we can actually create a reality that we truly love and appreciate and wish to celebrate and wish to participate in. But if we feed ourselves the wrong codes, then we build a reality that, we're just not going to have energy. We're not going to feel motivated. We're not going to want to participate in our own lives. So that's where using plant medicines comes in, because many of us find ourselves in this modern world finding a difficulty to find fulfillment. And we often end up following pathways of the mind that lead us building realities and creating prisons for ourselves instead of realities that we actually want to thrive in and truly love. Oftentimes, one of the largest things holding us back is actually these negative pathways that we've enforced in our own minds and in our own brains. So psilocybin-containing mushrooms, along with various other plant medicines that are entheogenic medicines, allow for neuroplasticity, which is essentially when new pathways are formed in the brain. And these pathways, let's say you have a habit, an addiction, can be a good habit, can be, that you like going for a run when you wake up in the morning. Or it can be that you like a cup of coffee when you wake up in the morning, or a cigarette. Pathway being enforced. And the more you do the thing, the stronger the pathway gets. But when we start working with plant medicines as tools, like even psilocybin-containing mushrooms, then what happens is we actually start using these plant medicines for the true benefits that they have, that they actually allow us to rewire our brain easily. And we can actually change habits and behaviors in ourselves that are no longer beneficial. So we can give up addictions that don't serve us. And also that includes mental thought patterns, false narratives that we tend to fall into all the time. So that's one of the many benefits of entheogenic medicines. There's just a little bit of a thing I wrote here about some current research and breakthroughs, which is that Johns Hopkins, Imperial College London, and many other universities and research facilities show significant results for treatment-resistant depression, reduction in anxiety related to psilocybin. And then MAPS also showed with MDMA for PTSD, about 67% of participants no longer met their PTSD criteria after about 3 sessions. Microdosing studies, there's many ongoing trials that promote the benefits for mood, cognition, and even neuroplasticity. There are so many studies out there and facts that are now studies that are actually proving that these medicines are not just ancestral and indigenous medicines that have been used for thousands of years by, the ones who came before us, but actually with modern science, it is backing that these medicines are truly helping for some serious issues in our modern society, such as depression, PTSD, anxiety, addiction. I mean, if we actually look at the state of affairs in the world today, who isn't an addict to some degree? It is absolutely heartbreaking, whether it's pain medication, whether it's coffee. I find myself guilty for hey, in the morning, I love a cup of coffee. And so many people do, whether it's cigarettes, and these things, they keep us going in the system. Sometimes that doesn't always serve us. And, our ancestors were much more connected to the land. They ate off the land. They got their clothing from the land, and they got their medicine and their connection from the divine, from the land. And, we have lost a lot of this knowledge, but not all of it. There's still many threads of connection that we still hold. And one of them here in South Africa is in the Transkei, where the culture is still so strong here in our own country. I presume many of you are South Africans in this masterclass. And it's incredible how many wonderful psychoactives we even have native to our own country, such as psilocybin-containing mushrooms, the ones that grow in the hills. If you come here in the Transkei in October, November, the hills are filled with psilocybin-containing mushrooms. And the locals actually believe that their ancestors are incarnated, or the spirits of their ancestors, the ones who came before them, work through the cattle. So the cows are actually seen as holy animals. And in their cow dung grows this sacrament, this beautiful psilocybin-containing mushroom, which they can commune with the divine and their ancestors. So they see the cow as this holy animal that delivers this holy sacrament from the land. But yet psilocybin mushrooms, for some reason, are illegal in this country. But if you happen to own a piece of land in the Transkei, you might just be a criminal during mushroom season. There are some fallacies in this reality, but we're slowly piercing the veil of illusion and getting to the crux of it, which is that, hey, these plant medicines that we've been using for thousands of years to help integrate the human experience, which can be quite traumatic, have actually been doing something. So I get so worked up. It's honestly so exciting because I really feel like we're at the beginning of an entirely new paradigm when it comes to understanding these medicines and integrating them into our society, and also healing in general. You know, our collective consciousness is actually ready for healing and integration. I say with psychedelics, it's often like, you know, maybe you're out in the ocean and you find yourself drowning. You're deep at sea and you can see the shore, but you just don't have the energy to get there. You use a psilocybin containing mushroom or a powerful entheogenic experience. It depends on how far out in the sea you are. Sometimes when you're working with addictions such as opiate dependencies, heroin addictions, you're pretty far out and it's really hard to get back. But with plant medicines such as iboga that have a ridiculous recovery rate on opioid dependence, that's the life raft that you have in the middle of the ocean. It's more like a life vest. It's slowly deflating. So that's where integration and doing the work comes in, because all of a sudden you have a breath of fresh air. You no longer have withdrawals. You have the ability to rewire your brain in a way that is more beneficial for your reality. But now you have to use this life raft or this life vest to get to shore. And that's where integration comes in. That's where it goes, you know, doing therapy, working with a trusted, maybe it's a facilitator, maybe it is a counselor or somebody that can actually work with you, because community is your friend. And ultimately, there was this rat pox study done back in the day, and many people have heard of it, but it was actually done on cocaine. And they gave rats cocaine, and all the rats killed themselves immediately. They just drank the cocaine water until they died. But then they thought, hey, if I was in a cage and all I had was cocaine water, maybe I would also just drink the cocaine water until I died. So they changed the study a little bit and they created a rat utopia, you know, with many other rats and lots of rat wheels and, you know, an abundance of activities for the rats to keep themselves busy with. And do you know what happened? They occasionally would dabble in the cocaine water, but they actually all chose life. And that just shows you that it's not necessarily the substance that is the evil thing or the bad thing. It's just that it's not why the addiction, it's why the pain. And that's what Gabor Mate says so beautifully, is not why the addiction, why the addict, why the pain, what pain is this person going through? Because truly, we don't know the suffering that another being carries. And oftentimes it's so easy to judge another, but we can't actually. We can only actually offer understanding and, if anything, a safe space for people to be themselves and to work through what they can. And so that's where the role of a psychedelic assisted therapist comes in. for people to actually have a safe space to explore their consciousness. And for the longest time, I think this has been the difficulty with integrating plant medicines into our society, is that people were afraid that people were just going to use these medicines and trip out and lose their minds. But ultimately, alcohol is far more that actually works with psilocybin with his patients, that you can eat your body weight in psilocybin containing mushrooms and you won't die. But to try and do that with sugar, you would most certainly die. And just to put some perspective in terms of the safety of consumption of these compounds. So what it really comes down to is that we have some false narratives around these plant medicines, and it's up to us to slowly change and rewrite these narratives in a way that we can integrate these medicines into our society in a beneficial way and a safe way, and also in a respectful way, because these plant medicines have been used ancestrally by indigenous communities for thousands of years. So we also have to pay some respect to our ancestors and the indigenous communities that are using these plant medicines. Many of them don't even like discussing them because they're too sacred. But there are many that I've spoken to that think that it is good for people to actually get the information, and that gatekeeping doesn't do much good in the world, because ultimately education is harm reduction. And I'll actually just go into some harm reduction protocols while I'm here, because like I said, we can really talk all night, and I just want to make sure that I stay on time here. So 11 golden rules for harm reduction. 1 is start low, go slow. When using any new substance, start low, go slow, test it out. Don't just jump in the deep end. When I was younger and first starting off with entheogenic use, one of my first experiences, I was about 16 years old, and I just jumped in and blew my mind wide open, and it took me years to integrate that experience. And the good thing is not everyone needs to do it that way. There's actually ways to integrate and form relationships with these plant medicines where you slowly get to know it and you wade into the deep end, and then you swim out and you can easily swim back, and you don't have to worry about getting lost out there, because you've gained the strength to swim out in your own consciousness, and you're not just taking a high dose and just completely displacing your entire reality. It's actually assaulting for your being to all of a sudden be thrown in the deep end, and a lot of people say just throw them in the deep end. Yes, but actually no. Let's go, start low, go slow. That also builds a trust with yourself. Then you go, hey, I want to explore this medicine, but I want to explore it respectfully. I want to understand it. I want to understand how it affects my body, how it affects my mind, how it affects my spirit. And I want to explore it slowly. And then building confidence within yourself and within the medicine, you can go further. Unless also, and especially if you want to take larger doses, then consuming psychedelics under facilitation is almost a necessity, because sometimes you have out-of-body experiences that allow you to leave your body, and when you are in that state, you are quite vulnerable. So you want to be in a safe space, and that's where the role of a facilitator comes in, to actually hold safe space for you, non-judgmentally, for you yourself to express yourself however that may be, which often includes purging, which is a form of release, which is done oftentimes via vomiting with certain medicines such as ayahuasca, which is an Amazonian brew, which contains 2 different plants that they brew together to make a psychoactive medicinal jungle brew that they've also been using for thousands of years. The primary psychoactive compound being DMT, and the activator in the brew being the ayahuasca vine itself, also known as soul rope in Quechua. And the ayahuasca is actually the vine. The DMT is the part that causes the psychoactive properties, but the humalas are actually the compound, the MAOI, or the monoamine oxidase inhibitor, that allows the DMT to be absorbed into your bloodstream. Because if you consumed it without the ayahuasca vine, or that being chacruna or chaliponga, also known as Psychotropic viridis, that's one of the most common plants that are consumed with Banisteriopsis carpi, the ayahuasca vine. So if you just consumed the Psychotropic viridis on its own, then you would actually have no effects whatsoever. But if you consume it with the ayahuasca vine, then it actually allows the DMT to be absorbed into your bloodstream. So then you have a 4-hour, very powerful hallucinogenic journey that usually comes with a purging because of the plant material that you're consuming. So some people will make extracts of these things to consume what they call pharmahuasca, which is an isolated extracted version of DMT and amalas put together, which apparently causes no real purge. But many people are against that because they believe, much like sugar is an extract from sugarcane, and now you have candy bars and you don't know where to stop. But if you had to chew sugarcane, it tells you, hey, you've had enough now. Your mouth's getting chewed up. You've had enough of that sugarcane. Put it down. Or if you eat a giant bunch of bananas, like, you're going to get full pretty quickly, and you're going to say, hey, all the fiber in my stomach, that's self-moderating. But when we are extracting and isolating compounds, there's no real self-moderating properties along the lines of the sugar and along the lines of many isolated compounds. So it's easier for us to poison ourselves when we're using extracted compounds because our bodies don't have the same warning signs that they do from consuming plant medicines or food, for that matter, in their unrefined forms. So that's ayahuasca. Honestly, the list goes on for so long. There's so many. That's just one of the most known ones. Another thing to know is to know your substances. Before you consume anything, understand what you are consuming. What is it? Where did it come from? What's the dosage range? How long does it last for? So you can understand what you're actually getting yourself into. And you need to learn the difference between a microdose, a threshold dose, a therapeutic dose, and a heroic dose. Because a microdose is essentially when you take, if you're using an psilocybin for an example, perhaps a regular dose would be around 2 grams. A heroic dose would be around 5 grams. A mini dose would be about 5 to 1 gram, 500 milligrams to 1 gram. And lower than 500 milligrams, usually around 150 to 250 milligrams, is where you have your microdose of psilocybin. Then, so you can also understand what you're trying to gain from the experience and decide what type of experience you want to go for. Because maybe you want to explore consciousness and travel through different realms, which go take a heroic dose. Or perhaps you want to just connect with your creativity, with yourself, check in with your version of the divine, or with you, just check in with yourself. And maybe you have some intentions you want to set. Maybe there's some habits you want to break, some false narratives that you feel like you want to reprogram. Then you're looking at about 2 grams. It also works from about 0.5 gram to 1 gram, anything from about 0.5 gram up. Then if you're looking at lower than 0.5 gram, then you're looking for microdosing, which is what I call the business in the front, party in the back. No, party in the front, business in the back, the anti-mullet. Because you are just having a great time and everything's just flowing and it's all so wonderful. You don't even feel like you're on anything or that anything's really happening. But then, meanwhile, there's some deep healing actually happening. And that's the benefits of microdoses, that you don't actually have to alter your consciousness. It's a sub-perceptual dose. So you don't actually perceive many differences when it comes to alterations of consciousness, other than maybe you might find mood elevation and also slight more compassion and empathy for yourself and others. These are some of the benefits: enhanced creativity. Perhaps when you listen to music, it just sounds so good. And, connecting to, perhaps parts of yourself that you've neglected or forgotten. There's so many benefits working with these plant medicines, and also just I call them tools. They're allies, they're tools, and they are abundant all over the world. So psilocybin containing mushrooms that grows here in the Transkei actually grows on every single continent on the planet. And I feel as if we've been using these mushrooms since the beginning of time, since perhaps we started early cattle farming, when psilocybin mushrooms started coming out of cattle poo. So this really is traced back to the beginning of mankind, the consumption of psilocybin mushrooms. And even if Antarctica wasn't frozen, they'd probably be growing there as well. So make sure that if you're consuming substances in general, that you always test your substances. It's really important to know what you are consuming, whether that's a naturally occurring compound or whether that is a synthetic substance. Avoid mixing substances. For a clean experience, just have one substance at a time to truly connect to that substance, especially when you're more new to experimenting with a substance, to truly understand and pay respect. And also, some combinations are truly fatal as well. That's why it's also important to consume particular psychedelic substances with a facilitator to make sure that you are actually not on any medication that could cause potential fatality or some serious health risks. So, like I said, I can't go into everything, but I would love to discuss some of my favorite psychoactive plants. And we've discussed quite a bit about psilocybin. Predominantly, it's found within the psilocybe genus. And there's about 200 species of mushrooms that actually contain psilocybin. So when you consume psilocybin, your body actually converts the psilocybin into psilocin. So some people will often mix psilocybin with a bit of lemon juice beforehand, maybe even a little bit of ginger. And then it actually helps the psilocybin get converted to psilocin before consumption. This often leads to a more powerful experience, but a shorter experience, because it takes less time for the mushrooms to come on, but it actually enhances the experience. Another thing that often enhances the experiences of psychedelics are actually MAOIs, because just along the lines of when you consume DMT and you take the ayahuasca vine is actually an MAOI, which is also found within Syrian rue seeds that enhances the effects of psychedelics. So it's important to understand what you're consuming, because if you use MAOIs with mushrooms, it actually makes it double as potent. So DMT is a psychedelic compound that is found within various different plant medicines all over the world, one of those being Mimosa hostilis, or found within Mexico, and also parts of South America, which is known as also Jurima preta. And then we have the Acacia confucia variety, which is another DMT containing plant. Then we have the Psychotropic viridis and the Chaliponga plants, which also contain DMT and also 5-MeO-DMT in smaller amounts, which I'll discuss shortly. And then we have also the Anadanthera culabrina, also the Anadanthera peregrina, which are sister plants and amazing psychoactive plants that have these seeds that I've visited a sacred valley in Ecuador called Vilcabamba. It actually translates to Vilca, sacred, and valley, Bamba, so it's sacred valley. And in this valley, it was actually said to be the origin of the San Pedro cactus, which is a psychedelic cactus. It contains a compound called mescaline. And this is actually a very interesting compound, which I can't climb into right now, but there are a whole host of psychoactive cacti. Another one of them being the Lophophora williamsii cacti from Central America, Mexico, and the Sonoran Desert around southern parts of the USA. And then we have in that Sacred Valley tobacco growing, Nicotiana rustica, which is known as the Aztec or the Mapacho tobacco. And that is actually, it contains 7 times more nicotine than regular tobacco, which is Nicotiana tabacum. And this tobacco they make a snuff out of, which is known as rape in South America, in the Spanish regions, and then chape in the more Portuguese regions of South America, and like Brazil. And the snuff is actually often mixed with herbs and with an activator, which is like a base. Usually they'll use wood ash or ashes mixed with the powderized tobacco, and then they blow it with a caripe, which is a self-administration tube, or a tepe, which is a tube that actually is for administering it to someone else, a tepe. And so that's one snuff that they make from the tobacco in this town. But then they also make another snuff from this Anadanthera culebrina, Anadanthera peregrina, this variety, specifically the culebrina variety. And this variety contains higher amounts of a compound called bufotamine, trace amounts of DMT, same as what's found in all of these other plants I mentioned. That's one of the most psychedelic compounds. It's even found in many plant species, even grasses. But so it's found inside of the seed, but higher amounts bufotenine. And bufotenine is, okay, one thing at a time. So the snuff is then also prepared from this Anadanthera culebrina seeds. And the seeds are popped like popcorn. They literally pop them when they're a golden brown color and peel them, and they smell like peanut butter. It's incredible. So they ground it up, then they use snail shells, which actually is found growing under the trees. And oftentimes you'll see psychedelic cacti and the tobacco growing in the shade of the vilca tree, or it's also known as the vilca tree, the sacred tree. So they use the snail's shells, and they grind it down to create, once again, a base. So this is an alkaline substance. So it's higher on the pH scale. And this allows the compounds inside the bufotenine to become free-based and to be absorbed through the nasal passages of whoever decides to embark on the experience. So by mixing it with the ash, and the same with the tobacco, it allows the compounds, the nicotine, and in this case, the bufotenine and the Anadanthera culebrina, to actually be absorbed into your nasal passages. And the effects are incredible. You feel warm sensations all over your body, and at higher doses, it causes a purge as well, much like ayahuasca, because this is a plant medicine. So at a higher dose, it tells you when this is getting to a very high level of compounds in the body, causing maybe mild toxicity and then causing a purge. But many people actually say this purge is some of the spiritual healing that takes place, releasing what no longer serves you through the process of a purge, kind of like a cleanse, which is viewed like a spiritual cleanse. Many people will go on dietas or these specific fasts and cleanses in the jungle before consuming plant medicines. Some of those dietas are done with a plant called Bobinsana, which is an incredible plant. Bobinsana actually translates to Serenita bobinsana, which means serene mermaid, and it has these long taproots that flow into the rivers to really absorb water. It loves water and has these beautiful pink flowers. And that's actually drank as a heart opener to open up your heart and work as an entactogen or an empathogen. That's the same role that MDMA and other heart openers play, which cause openness, connection to other, connection to self. So that's Bobinsana. So many people will use Bobinsana to connect to an energy of unconditional love and acceptance. And then once there, then they're actually ready for the plant medicine. And this purge is generally done with various different plant medicines. This is just one of them, the Bobinsana, but can be done with many different plant medicines. So I feel like, let me check what the time is now. Okay. 22.
Like another time check, Lee, to allow for
Pardon me?
Q&As. Let me know when you'd like me
Yeah.
to put on the time for Q&As, and I'll hold the time.
Okay. Perfect. I think let's start the Q&As. We'll start shortly.
Okay.
Maybe around 7ish.
Beautiful.
So another interesting plant that is native to Mexico is Salvia divinorum. So Salvia divinorum, also known as the divinest sage, has been used indigenously by the Mazatec people, shamans in Mexico. The word shaman, by the way, is actually a Siberian word for medicine man. But it's become a very global word that many people understand for medicine man. In South America, a medicine man or medicine woman, a man would be a curandero or a maestro, and a medicine woman would be a curandera or a maestra. So you wouldn't traditionally be called a shaman in the jungle, or in at least the Amazonian regions. Usually you can tell when a place is slightly more commercially, or when it's been slightly a bit westernized, they're like, oh, I'm this wise shaman. And one of the main roles of a facilitator, and this is something to really watch out for, because we are also in the age and era of a lot of people taking advantage of the psychedelic revolution that's taking place at the moment. So you want to be aware that every medicine man and woman out there is just somebody who's mastered to hold space. And ultimately, everybody has the ability to be their own facilitator and their own shaman and their own guide in life. And they only need to build that confidence within themselves to truly hold space for themselves. So oftentimes, the shamans will be people that can really just create that safe space for you to explore and to feel guided and safe. So it's not necessarily that a lot of medicine men and women out there that are not very sincere within the field will pretend to be these wise and intuitive people, and it's all just a money-making scheme. So they don't actually offer you the healing services that you need, and they just call themselves a shaman and sing a couple of songs that they've heard from somebody and take your money and off you go, and there's no real healing that's happening. A real facilitator is going to tell you, hey, I'm a facilitator. I'm holding space for you. This is all about you. This is not about me. This is about your journey and your exploration and your consciousness, not about my experience. It's the facilitator's role is not about them. It's about you. If you are going on the journey, it's your journey. It's your own personal initiation into your own reality. And ultimately, everyone has their own perception and experience on life. So not one person will have the same journey or the same experience as another, because we are all unique expressions of source consciousness, some people may say. But once again, you can be a Muslim, you can be a Christian, you can be a spiritualist, whatever your religious or personal spiritual preference are. Entheogens are for all people from all walks of life, and there's no one shoe fits all. It's ultimately up to you to create your experience, and just to find a safe space for you to explore that for yourself. The get out of jail free card that I often give to people is acceptance. If you can just tell yourself, this too shall pass, nothing is too much. And that goes for all states in life. One thing that I've also found within various different plant medicines is the song. Many journeyers will put music on for their participants, and really experienced facilitators actually sing their own heart songs to participants. And these songs will not actually often be words that can be programmed into people's consciousness, but rather just sounds. And for those of you who have experienced a true entheogenic experience with the songs that come along with from a proper facilitator that knows his heart songs, as I call them, or their Icaros. Icaros are also known as magic songs from South America. It is truly a transformational experience because the music also acts as a guiding light that helps guide you. And once again, music, well, mushrooms is an external substance. So it's still something you're using externally to gain insight and experience into your reality. Whereas music and song, that is an internal medicine. And that's part of the integration. There's many practices that we can do in our realities to connect to ourselves that aren't necessarily related to consuming something externally. And some of these things can be song and dance, something that comes from the inside out. And plant medicines oftentimes allow us to actually break down those barriers and those boundaries that hold us back from connecting to those parts of ourselves and holding space for ourselves to truly express and be ourselves. Because through song and through dance, we see all the layers of our ego peel away as we realize what really matters is actually having the freedom to be yourself, even if it means to be silly sometimes or to not sound great, and to work through that and find that actually behind all of that is perfection. We are all imperfectly perfect. And that's what I feel like plant medicines really helps us remember sometimes and connect to those parts of ourselves that are sometimes so wise. We are sometimes the wisest beings, but we forget it sometimes. And when we give ourselves space to truly step into being that facilitator in our own lives, magic happens. So when it comes to the Salvia divinorum, it contains a psychedelic compound known as salvinorin A, which is a very strange compound. It's incredibly complex, and people traditionally chew the leaves, and the leaves are chewed and quid and then sublingually absorbed through the mouth. Quidding is when you chew a plant medicine to let the saliva contain the compounds and let that saliva sublingually absorb the compounds into your bloodstream. So quidding is that, and you would quid sciletium. Traditionally, fermented sciletium, Sciletium tritosum, is a psychoactive plant native to South Africa that contains mesembrine and other psychoactive compounds that the Khoisan would use to actually help them cover vast distances across some of these really arid and tough conditions that we have to face here in the South African Karoo. And they managed to cross these deserts with no problem. Well, maybe there was some problem, but most certainly these the fermented sciletium helped the Khoisan cross these large distances and also work as an appetite suppressant, similar to how the indigenous in the Andes would chew coca leaves in combination with snail shells also, or seashells or they would make like a wood ash paste that they would mix with the leaves to chew it so that it would also be sublingually absorbing the cocaine into their mouths. Cocaine, when consumed by a quid versus the isolated cocaine, is once again like consuming sugarcane versus consuming sugar. It's completely different. The one is incredibly addictive and the other one tells you, hey, you've just chewed a bunch of leaves and your mouth is all sore. You can't chew any more leaves. And yes, maybe you want to chew a couple more leaves, but still you can only chew so many. And then you've got to spit it out. So these coca leaves are also what helped create the Andean pathways and helped the Incan civilization create the civilization I feel that they did. And many plant medicines, even opiates that have such a bad rap, the Papaver somniferum opium poppy, actually helped soldiers during the war stay alive. The levels of pain that they were experiencing were actually too much for humans to experience. And some of us wouldn't even be here today if it wasn't for those plant medicines that our ancestors consumed and used respectfully to actually sustain our human existence, and understood what allies these plant medicines truly are to us, and to help maintain this world around us, and our connection to those world. And as much as maybe opiates helped with our pain and stimulants helped with appetite suppression and the energy to cover vast distances, psychedelics, I feel, helped us integrate the trauma that we experience as humans and helped us connect deeper to appreciation, to gratitude, to understanding, to compassion. They were, I feel, for many thousands of years, part of the human experiences as our guides and allies to help integrate this experience. And we're slowly remembering and walking each other back home, one step at a time. So I feel incredibly grateful to be on this journey, and I'm incredibly grateful to each and every one of you for actually showing up and participating in this masterclass, because ultimately, the world needs it. You know, at the moment, I run a little coffee shop here in the Transkei, and it's not for too much longer because it's been, like I said, a bit of a research project down here. And it's very hard to actually live over here because there's no real hot water, and not just hot water, there's no real water. It's hardly any electricity. And it's very hard to run a coffee shop like that. But one thing that I realized was that most of the world lives like that, you know, and that's something that we forget sometimes within our realities that we live in. You know, we take all these things for granted, but actually, you know, just having running water and like lights is a huge thing. And most of the world don't actually have those benefits. So it's been a great reality check for me to come here and to experience this. But an even greater reality check has been, well, I would say it's on par. The souls that have been coming through here in this coffee shop, you know, so many people that have been telling me how they've been on handfuls of prescription medication, and now they are just on microdoses, 1 day on, 3 days off, 1 day on, 2 days off, some months off, no problem, from taking handfuls of pills for depression and anxiety. Many people come here for a breath of fresh air and an escape from, you know, the hustle and bustle of city life. But what I can see is that many of the people that come here, they're also coming here for the mushrooms. And when I speak to them about mushrooms, it's clear that so many people are suffering with depression and suicidal ideation and PTSD and addiction, and it's really not a joke. And we actually need to take this seriously as a society and come together to help our brothers and sisters that are in need, and also to help ourselves get the treatment and therapies that we need to collectively heal our consciousness and help heal our planet, because the time is now. And so thank you guys for showing up in this moment, and I really appreciate each and every one of you for coming here today. And ultimately, I wish I could just talk about this. There's so many plants to talk about, and I could literally be here all day talking about them. And that is why we made this 120-hour, 9-week course that is actually a certificate. Like, you get a little certification because you pass an exam at the end. And it's hosted by the Psychedelic Society of South Africa. And we really do a deep dive into the neurochemistry, into the phytochemistry, which is essentially the plant chemistry, learning about secondary metabolites, primary as well, but focusing on those secondary metabolites and climbing into all the amazing compounds that are found within 40 different naturally occurring psychotropic plants, animals, and fungi from around the world, ending off with psychedelic assisted facilitation and harm reduction, microdosing, truly climbing into all facets of this very fascinating field of research. And then we have 9 weeks to really climb in and discuss in depth this topic and field. So if any of you are interested in that, Yeah, maybe Kat, you might want to talk about this.
I would. Thank you for, as always, bringing all of the energy that you do and did this evening. I have placed some testimonials of some of the students that attended the course earlier this year. I've put those in the chat so that you, anyone attending the course, welcome to go through them. The link to the course is also there. And I've also placed a note just to say that anyone from this masterclass who does register with us to complete the course will, within the next week, will be receiving a 5% discount. And then, because the spirit of why we're offering this is to share the wisdom and deepen the collective understanding of psychotropic plants, we are open to scholarship options and potential payment plans. But Lee, I'm just curious to know, I know, having supported you in the first course, how much the students gained and the value that they saw. I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm just curious to know from your perspective, what surprised you the most, or what did you walk away learning from the experience of delivering this class online for that 9-week period?
I think that what surprised me the most was actually I think how close I'd grown to everyone by the end of the experience, because I think we actually became a bit of a family by the end of the course. And I think that I plan on staying in contact with pretty much everyone that I connected with, because it was just a really awesome group of people. And I feel that also it surprised me how passionate people are on the topic, because I've always been so passionate about this topic my whole life, and now I finally have some people to share this passion with. So that's also been really wonderful, just to connect with like-minded souls and actually just share the journey, and to know that we're also not alone on this journey, and that we actually have each other, because many of us that have these life-altering experiences with psychedelics can sometimes feel like it is actually quite a lonely journey. Because sometimes it feels like it's almost like you've woken up in a world that's asleep. And in many ways, it is like that. But it's also, we've woken up for a reason. And we're here to, like I said, remember and walk each other home, and actually build a reality that we are truly in love with. And that may take a long time, because, like I said, I'm living in a place right now with no electricity and no water. Harmony is a long way away. But if we actually, step together, walk together, we can make it home. That's how I feel about it. And I mean, we are home already. We just need to take care of our home. Let's take back our role as custodians of this planet.
Yeah. Just to reflect your experience of the community and the like-mindedness and the closeness of the cohort, I just want to say to anyone considering this course, there is a WhatsApp group that is very alive, and Lee is the most engaged and generous facilitator. So beyond the call that happens on a weekly basis, we are very fortunate to have her on tap, where she supplies additional content, resources, asks questions, and really towards the final exam, there's a huge amount of support and additional tutorage and filling in of gaps. And so it does stimulate a really healthy and beautiful bond of like-minded people in a very supportive environment that I believe continues in community beyond the time of the course. Lee, one of the attendees tonight has requested your email address. May I place it in the chat here so that anyone with questions specific to the course can come directly to you and get a sense of information? Would you mind giving it to me so that I don't get the wrong one?
Sure. Let me write it on the chat.
You can put it in the chat. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So also, if anyone wants to know what my email translates to, it actually is something that I made up.
You'll understand why I didn't want to want to just take a swing at the spelling because I have done that before.
Means the crazy witch doctor lady in Spanish. Um, and so it's locura, which is crazy, and then curandera, which is female medicine woman. So it's locurandera. I'm that crazy witch doctor lady. So you can message me at locurandera@gmail.com. And yeah, I'm here to help. And we have another masterclass, but it's probably going to be a repeat of this one in July. And then the main course starts in August. And then we really just take our time to dissect and do a proper deep dive to satisfy that thirst for knowledge on naturally occurring psychotropics from around the world. And there are so many, but I have to stick to 40 because honestly, I think we'll do another course at another time to climb into some of the more obscure ones. But there's also constantly new ones being discovered. And it's also, like I said, it's a box of frogs, and once you climb into the field, it only expands. Every place has its own stories related to plant medicines and its connections. Just well, I think we pretty much done, or I'll just touch on one more thing. I think we still have a bit of time. So what I wanted to discuss was that you get psychoactive frogs, such as the Bufo alvarius, and that is from the Sonoran Desert. It's also known as the Sonoran Desert toad. And that contains bufotenine, which contains the same compound that's found inside of that seed from that sacred valley, called Anadenthera colubrina. So the bufo frog actually contains bufotenine as well as 5-MeO-DMT, mostly 5-MeO-DMT, which is on par with DMT and just as strong, just as mind-blowing. And a lot of people will use these medicines for real life-changing visionary experiences, those who truly feel like they need a reset in their realities. Then you've got Cambo, which is also a psychedelic frog, known as bicolor phalloides. It's quite a long name. And it's known as the Cambo toad. And essentially, that's actually an opioid peptide that it creates. So it's not a psychedelic compound, it's actually an opioid peptide. So it's more of along the lines of an opioid, which is heroin, but not like that. It's not as potent, but it does cause a purge, and it actually causes bile to be secreted. And you actually have very deep cleansing, and they call it the jungle vaccine. The secretions from the toad is then rubbed onto your skin and absorbed through your skin into your bloodstream, and usually a purge happens. And this experience lasts for about 40 seconds, and you actually swell up and look like a frog. So those are some of the psychoactive frogs. Then you've got the mushrooms, which you've got psilocybin mushrooms, like I spoke about, the most common ones being like psilocybe cubensis. You've also got supposed to be cyanosins and variety of other ones. But then you've got Amanita muscaria, which is actually the stereotypical fairy tale red and white capped mushrooms that you see in many storybooks growing up. And it truly is a beautiful mushroom. That one actually contains a compound called muscimol, which is actually more of a sedative, relaxing compound. A sedative, it kind of causes more sleep and sedation. And there's actually been a sleep medication that's been made out of muscimol. So traditionally, there's like the claws and these red and white mushrooms that happen to grow under the pine trees, and the reindeer happen to eat them with their red noses, eating those red mushrooms. Hey, it sounds a bit like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And then, they actually hang these mushrooms in front of the fireplace, kind of like you'd hang the socks. And that's how they would dry the mushrooms, because if you just eat the mushroom, you will purge and you'll throw up, because your body can't absorb the ibotenic acid. But if you essentially decarboxylate it, like how you do with cannabis, when you put it in the oven, just to get it to a certain temperature so that it actually becomes edible. Because if you just eat the flower of cannabis, you won't get psychoactive effects. But if you decarboxylate it in the oven at like 100 degrees Celsius, more or less, for a little bit of time, then you actually allow the compounds to become psychoactive. So it's the same with the ibotenic acid, but in a different way. Like, you actually denature the poison by heating it. So that's why you do a dehydration on the mushrooms, and then it actually causes it to be psychoactive without being poisonous. And how they would traditionally consume these mushrooms is actually they would feed it to the reindeer and then drink the reindeer urine. And there's even myths about women eating the mushroom, and then men drinking their urine, and then going into battle with the energy of the womb and the mushroom. And it also causes a little bit of analgesic effect. So basically, it would essentially take away pain. So the warriors would go into battle on their mushrooms. And that's some of the myths around Amanita muscaria mushrooms. And that's where the word shaman actually originates from Siberia. So it would be a shaman. Ho, ho, ho.
I'm
And
just laughing
then
at Calvin's reaction as the myth of Christmas starts to take a different shape.
yeah, all of a sudden Santa is a Siberian shaman.
Flying reindeers.
And giving people his red and white mushrooms. So then that's the mushrooms. And then when it comes to, and those are just some psychoactive mushrooms. And then when it comes to plants, there are so many. But are there any questions before the end of the masterclass? Because, like I said, I could just run off in many different directions, but if there's any specific directions.
We have one from Calvin. He says, perhaps it depends on the species, but I would very much like to know if I will have to spend days hunting for any respective entheogens if I planned a trip, pardon the pun, to South Africa. I plan on doing something like this once or twice a year and plan on creating a list on candidates beforehand, such as psilocybin, natalensis, and the one occurring along the wild coast if there aren't any more. Canna or African dream seed in the north coast of KZN, etc. I will call it my entheogen hunting adventures, but won't want to do it if I can't find the respective entheogen in a day or two, and then consume them in the end as an additional reward. Also, does South Africa have a rich variety of entheogens, so I don't have to search for the same things every time? I think Kelvin must obviously be dialing in from overseas. Is that correct, Kelvin?
Well, so essentially, just to climb into Calvin's question a little bit. Northwest. Oh, from Northwest. Okay, so basically South Africa does have a rich variety of entheogens, but a lot of them haven't really been. So almost a really cool thing could even be to kind of even go hunting for some South Africa's more rare ones, because ultimately we are just even scratching the tip of the iceberg. But some of South Africa's most popular ones is canna, which is harder to find in the wild. So I don't know how my connection's doing at this point in time.
It's doing well.
Okay, so Scletium tortuosum, there is the Cannaland, in the Klein Karoo, South Africa, you'll find that's the most Scletium-rich area. And basically, it's more common to visit Scletium farms at this point than to actually find it growing in the wild, because it's also somewhat of a protected species at this point in its more native habitat. So if you would like to explore with Scletium and wish to visit some Scletium farms, that's something that we can if that is something you're interested in, that's something that I can refer you to. A good friend of mine's a scletium farmer, and he's got a laboratory where he's also extracting scletium and working on various different fermenting isolates. So they're actually fermenting scletium and then isolating the compounds from the ferments, which is the more traditional way of what they were doing, which was traditionally they would ferment the scletium and then they would use the fermented scletium. So the somewhat phytopharmaceutical companies are doing that now, but it's not quite the authentic experience, although there are for sure some indigenous communities that are still working with scletium, just not as many. Another one would be the psilocybin containing mushrooms, the natalenses that you're speaking about, does in fact still exist, and it is here in the Transkei. But the harvest season is around October, November in their rainy time. So if you just research the rainy season in the Transkei area, the Wild Coast, that's the best time to actually visit. And the hills are filled with mushrooms, all different types, including the amakoya mushrooms, which are these incredible, delicious mushrooms that also make wonderful pasta with, or whatever. If you want to eat your mushroom dish, however, it's a mushroom wonderland. And then in the Western Cape, I have found psilocybin cyanescens mushrooms growing there, which are more your wood-loving variety of mushrooms. And they are found growing amongst the ferns in the pine forests, which is a bit more of a relaxing one. Some of these mushrooms are quite potent here in the Transkei, but a lot of them will be weaker than your conventionally grown indoor mushroom variety, because I mean, we've gotten it's the same with the cannabis industry, how we've gotten so ridiculous when it comes to genetically modifying our strains. It's become the same with the mushrooms, some of these like Treasure Coasts or B plus, and we've got some of these mushrooms that are coming out here are like some of the names I've heard lately. There's Gandalfs and the Shaktis.
The Shaknami is a tidal wave and Shakti hybrid, but apparently
that's what I'm talking about.
Its potency feels like a tsunami, apparently, hence the name.
I had a mushroom chocolate the other day, just half a mushroom chocolate, and it was so incredibly strong. It was half a gram of mushrooms, and I was actually so surprised at how little is actually needed to really gain benefits from these plant medicines when it's really also grown the correct way with the right intentions. That's what a lot of people also believe. It's not that what you eat, it's the attitude you eat it with. Many growers will also say the energy you put into growing something really makes a difference. And perhaps it is placebo, but truly I like to know that the substances I've consuming have been grown with love or have been grown from the earth. Ideally, I've grown them in the earth, because then I have the respect and the connection to the plant medicines. And in the course, we also climb deeply into the propagation and cultivation of all these plant medicines, animals and fungi. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Other psychoactives, you can explore iboga in South Africa, although it's not native to South Africa. So there's only really scletium and mushrooms as like our two main psychoactives. And then there's a lot of like dream roots, like the Umvuma Mhlope, and I believe also the fever tree is actually also used as a dream enhancing tree. But I would definitely, if you wish to connect with some medicine people in South Africa, I can also connect you with some medicine people up for, it depends where you want to explore, but there's a lot of really wise sangomas that are so connected to all the dream herbs and plants that grow here natively. So every area will actually have their local Bosi doctor or bush doctor or Sangoma. So that's kind of who I usually connect with in an area here in South Africa. And then I ask them, plants that alter your consciousness, and then they usually smile and they slowly introduce. But a lot of the knowledge is, they don't just want to share it with everyone, because a lot of these plant medicines are held in great reverence and great respect. One of those being David's root here in South Africa. Very fascinating. There's a root around here they call Saint David's root or David's root, and they my first experience was from a Sangoma, like a South African bush doctor, and I inhaled the root, and it put me onto a DMT experience immediately where I was standing. And I hardly understand this root, but it's very grounding and brings you right into yourself. And it was very relaxing. And I don't even know what it is. I'm still researching it. And there's so many just like these, So they've been using them for thousands of years, and they're very connected to the land still. Many South African bush doctors, and all over the world, really. Every place has their indigenous medicine men and women.
And I think that's what's so beautiful about the showcase and the contents of this course is your collection of lived experience from around the world that you so generously share with everyone in far more depth over the course of the 9 weeks. Thank you to everyone for your time. Beautifully, we are giving everyone 10 minutes of their time back. Appreciate you being here and sharing this early part of your evening with us. If you enjoyed this and would like to recommend it to anyone else, as Lee said, we will be running this very same masterclass again in July as an additional opportunity for anyone to get a feel for whether this course is for them, or just to come along for the experience of an hour and a half of a little taste of what Lee can share and teach us. You've got Lee's email address should you need any details to help you to decide. You've got testimonials from people who completed the course earlier this year. And the link is there for more information. Please reach out, please connect with us. As you can see, we are real human beings, and we are here to help to ensure that anyone who wishes to learn more and grow more and teach more can do so with our assistance. So thank you with great gratitude to everyone who's here, and to Lee for
Thanks, everyone.
And wisdom sharing.
Thank you so much, Kat. I really appreciate it, as always.
It's wonderful to see you all. Thank you and good night.
Good night.